All right, I think we are live. So welcome everyone to another Matt Maran Motoring live stream here on the Matt Maran Motoring YouTube channel. Hope you're all having a great weekend here. Thanks so much for stopping by. So like all the other usual live streams, I'm going to try to go for about 2 hours or so. I'm still feeling a little off. I probably sound a little bit off. So no guarantees tonight. If you want to get a question answered, make sure you're a member there. We'll try and give them priority. And if I sense my voice starting to go, we'll jump to that, exclusively. But otherwise, anyone who does a super chat or a super thanks also gets that priority answering. So let me see. I'm going to fix this, I think, slightly. I'll make sure that's still, there we go. All right. I see we have Vishal and Lancelot and Nicholas and Fazlin and Kevin and Raphael and let me see, and Chad and Tony and Dozier Shaw. Thanks so much for stopping by, everyone. Vishal, starting us off here, says, first one of the night. My spots are a Gen 1 RAV4, Suzuki XL7, and a mid-2000s Mercedes C230 compressor. Nice. Those, I don't know how many of those are left around, but I feel like that one especially probably doesn't have a lot of examples still left. So that's pretty cool. All those are great spots. My quirky spot was a Murano Cross Cabriolet in the tealy sky blue kind of color with a tan top, kind of a rarer combo, I think. That was interesting. I don't see those very often, but especially in that color combo, kind of rare, I think. But nothing super cool actually this weekend, honestly. No sporty vehicles, which is kind of a surprise. It was nice weather here and everything, but did a little bit of driving around, but did not see anything too sporty, sadly. I did see a second gen Scion TC, which I guess are kind of rare these days, but it wasn't anything special. But nice to see some of those out there still kicking too. And Lancelot says, hello, fellow Matt Maran motoring fans. My spot this week was a blue with white stripes S550 GT350. Very nice. That's awesome. And let me see. Vishal also says he saw an S550 Bullet at the grocery store yesterday. That green color. Very nice. Yeah, I know. I very rarely see them around here. At least there used to be one other guy kind of in my area that had one, but I haven't seen his in years either. So I don't know if he ended up getting rid of his too or what. But yeah, that's actually a pretty rare car around here too. I'm curious if you see a lot of them there in Texas, Vishal. But let me see. Fazlin says, hey, Matt, how's your week been so far? Did any good drives? Not necessarily. I actually filmed the GR86 this week, so you saw that posted up very shortly after I filmed that. So that was, fun driving that one. But otherwise, not really. I just saw those, speaking of fun drives, Haggerty just announced, and this is not sponsored or anything, but Haggerty just announced their top driving road of the year, which I didn't know was a thing actually until today. But this year there's a road in PA that I don't think I've ever been on. I think it's State Route 144. There might be a few. I think maybe Rich is up in that area. But anyway, it goes from the very top of Pennsylvania in the middle of the state thereabouts, which I very rarely am in, to down about halfway, I think, north to south. Apparently it's a really good road. If any of you are up in that area, maybe Raphael with all of his motorcycle adventures, maybe he would know. But apparently that's a good road. So now that Haggerty's blasted out there, I'm sure it's going to get just, overrun with a bunch of idiots with more horsepower than brains. But, I'm hoping that it's a nice road. I like to try it out sometimes since it's not that far. Could be a fun little vlog maybe to, one of these days when I have a nice press car that's, sporty, maybe take it out there and explore it with you guys for the first time or something. It'd be kind of cool. So we'll see. Let me see. Michelle says the new gen Elantra looks impressive. Can't help but wonder if an Elantra looks like that. That looks like that would a next gen Sonata be. What would a next gen Sonata be like? Yeah. So if you guys didn't see, it was just revealed in Korea. We don't have any of the specs, I don't think yet. I think they said it's going to be mostly carryover motors, but looks really good. The new Elantra, our North American version will be basically the same thing, most likely. I'm really digging the side profile, especially. It kind of, I can't put my finger on what it is. Maybe it'll come to me someday. But when I saw the side profile, obviously it's kind of got the boxy thing going. It is kind of like a very evolutionary look, in my opinion, as far as where they went with the last Elantra. And this is, more evolutionary and less of a polar opposite like they have done in the past. But the side profile, it's giving me like, I don't know if it's like Fox body vibes and the side. It's something in that ballpark, like 80s blocky. Maybe it's like the Mercury even. Something like that is what I'm kind of getting. Because there's like a double like C pillar area. I think if I remember correctly, it looked kind of interesting. But anyway, yes, I do think new Elantra looks fantastic. I'm just terrified they're going to get rid of the manual with the Elantra, and I hope they don't. We'll see. Maybe they'll even use it as the first vehicle in their experimental thing. I think them and Ferrari are kind of going to be doing possibly in the future of having a dual clutch automatic that you can run through gates with and treat it like a manual, even though I don't think those have clutch pedals in that kind of a patented hypothetical setup. But I'm worried that might be the best they can offer us. Because at this point, back with the manual and the current Elantra, and the justification there was that first it came to Veloster, and they always knew it was also going to come to Elantra. And so I think between the two of them, they were able to justify it. I mean, probably wasn't a great business case even then, but now being only Elantra, and I just don't know what the volumes are and what the take rate is on the manual for those. But I mean, maybe they'll just do it, for the passion of it, and not, for the business sense of it. But that's the only thing about that. It's like going to be bittersweet if it's like, oh, awesome new launcher, and now it's automatic only. I mean, it'll still be awesome, no matter what. Going to be, bigger engine and all that. But I'm just a little worried about the manual. We'll see. And Lancelot says, may as well get the party started early. GR Corolla. Cheers. Yeah, I will take all of the water breaks here I can tonight with my voice. So sounds good to me. And I see Chad says, hey, Matt, GR Corolla chatters. Cheers again. And Luke says, okay, we are now live. I see we have, Lancelot Fischel and the other guy, Chad and Luke. Yeah. And Chad says, I live in Skyline, and while door dashing, I went to a neighborhood called Tiburon. Any hope for a return of a cool Hyundai coupe? I don't know. They've been playing around with stuff. I mean, there was even, apparently mid-engine prototypes, like an MR2 kind of competitor that was, at least being toyed with. I don't know what the status of something like that is. I haven't heard rumors about that in years at this point. But I don't think there's anything like that on the horizon. I could be wrong, but I'm like, the easy thing they could have done, in my opinion, and we talked about this before, was take the Ioniq platform and just put a two-door body on it. Make it the Vision 74 instead of making it this weird hydrogen, $1 million thing, whatever it's going to be. Like, instead, just take the EGMP platform, put that styling without the wing, just tone it down to look like a regular, 240SX kind of thing. And I think they would have sold so many of those. Obviously, maybe it would have been an uphill battle like Charger EV. But I think Hyundai buyers are going to be a little bit more open-minded than the Dodge buyer. So I think it would have done better, but maybe it wouldn't have. I don't know. But that, to me, was the only hope as far as like a realistic, again, like bean counter perspective, like making a coupe on the cheap. Like, you make it cheap by using, a common platform and common interior components and all that. And I think that the Ioniq was prime for that. And then, now they're, probably going to probably be a little more selective in these current times until EVs, really start to take off hard again and become a larger market segment. Yeah. So in the meantime, I don't know. I don't envision any other stuff, unfortunately. And Luke says, it was the week of Pontiacs for me. I saw 2 Grand Prix GXs, Sunbird convertible, 2 Vibes, and a Grand Am. Wow, that is impressive. I'm glad there's so many Pontiacs still out there, especially those older ones too. I mean, the Vibes are no surprise because it's, a Toyota Matrix underneath. They'll run till the end of time. But the other stuff is Really, yeah, I'm impressed. That's awesome. And Vishal says the Genesis Coupe was cool in its day. I remember Saab Kyle bought one new back in 2010, 16 years ago. I know it is crazy how long ago some of these things are. I'm 14 years to the month that I bought the BRZ. It'll be a big 15-year celebration next year. But yeah, it's crazy how that's the time just flies with some of those things. Yeah, and I wonder if he misses his Genesis Coupe. I haven't heard recently, about any of his stuff. I haven't watched his channel in a while, but yeah, that was a cool car. And Tony says, "Hey Matt, not many spots this week since week except for a Bentley Mulliner at my local shop. Right? Happy summer, everyone. Yeah, happy summer to you as well. And Bentley is always fun to spot. That's cool." Dozier said the base Slate truck may be affordable, but not a good value for the money. Too many unknowns and lack of many basic features common to base trims. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think it's all relative, obviously. It depends on what the others offer for, the same money. I mean, and right now, if you're really being strict on what the competitors are, there are none. So unless, you go up to Rivians and, all the other electric trucks that are expensive. So, I mean, in that context, they can kind of be whatever. But once this, new Ford Maverick size truck comes, if they stick to the $30,000 price tag and actually stick to that price tag for a while, because everyone remembers with Maverick started, what did it start at? 22 or something? Or was it 20 before destination? I can't remember, but it started dirt cheap, and that's what got all the hype going. And then, it quickly went up in price. It didn't help that it was, inflation era, in the early 2020s there, but like, the price quickly got out of that realm, and so it'll come down to what does Ford actually deliver? Is it actually 30 grand, and how long does it stay at that 30 grand price point? And what do you get for that 30 grand? But it's safe to say, if it's going to have four doors and a back seat, it's already up ahead of the Slate. It's going to have a screen. It's going to have power windows, those types of things. So I think that, yes, you're right. Right now, I think they might have a little bit of an edge because they're, beating Ford to the jump, but not by much. I mean, that sounds like that electric truck's maybe 6 months or so out. I'm kind of envisioning a Detroit Auto Show reveal for that because they're saying 2027, but it sounds like it's really nicely on schedule and they're actually ramping up like trial production and all this stuff. So I think it. I mean, maybe it can even be revealed this fall. I don't know, but I think they've been saying 2027 for everything in the meantime. So we'll see what happens with that. But I think the other component about Slate is, not people like it's not for people like me and you, Dozier, who think in terms of how much stuff you get for your money. I think there's a lot of people that, and Slate kind of is smart with how they're marketing this car. It's not about what you can get for your money. It's just like you want something simple, and obviously it needs to be less than the more expensive stuff, because you're not going to pay more unless you're buying a Porsche. You're not going to be paying more for less, paying them to take out your back seat and stuff. But like, with the Slate, I think, there is huge appeal for people who say, I don't want a complicated car. I don't want to have to run everything through my screen that I know is going to break eventually. I, don't want to screen it at all, or I don't want power windows. And people who really are in love with that kind of an idea. And I also think it actually could be really pretty perfect for Gen Z because these are, a generation that have said that they, are wanting this kind of analog connection in many cases. This was why used manual transmission cars have gone up in demand pretty decently, because a lot of Gen Zers want that basic connection. They're burned out on tech. They've known tech their whole lives. It's, been a normal thing, but even they are saying this is toxic. This is something I want to be removed from. And, and also the fact, like, a lot of people are, really freaked out about connected cars and all this stuff. The Slate isn't connected. I do not believe it has any kind of data connection, and there's no software to update over the air because there's no screen interface. So and they even were saying, like, with the repairability, supposedly, like they're like, yes, like we don't have a bunch of service centers, but like they're going to be partnering with various like shops that can fix them because they're going to be hopefully simple enough that you can just either fix it yourself or take it to a mom and pop place or some other, place that's not a giant dealership and have it serviced. And with so many people being really up in arms about the right to repair and the Repairability Act and all these things that are actually being put forth to try and make it so that you can keep fixing your car in the future, the slate is geared towards that crowd as well. So it's the no connection, basic, no frills, repair it yourself. And it also, I mean, if they do it right, which is a big if, but if they do it right, it's an incredibly simple thing. It's one little low powered electric motor, as pretty small-ish battery pack. And yes, there's some high voltage wiring there and stuff. So, the whole thing isn't, it's not quite, a stagecoach as far as simplicity goes, but like, it's pretty foolproof as long as you get the basic software and the basic wiring and the basic components for those things done correctly. Yeah, I mean, it should be a very simple thing that should run forever and need very little repairs anyway. So I think like it's the less is more crowd that I think is going to be more excited about that. And yeah, for value shoppers, it's already kind of an uphill battle because a lot of value shoppers, especially those who don't desperately need an EV with 150 miles of range or whatever, they'll gladly go get a Maverick hybrid. Which, if you do take it easy on options, you can probably get one under 35. And have something fairly comparable. Or you can go really stripper. I think, they're right at 30 or maybe 32 now, starting with destination and stuff. So, and that's a thing that's available as well from a known company with a ton of, support and all that. So, yeah, it is going to be a little bit of a challenge, and we'll see. We just don't know how big is the market of people who really want something that basic. And some people have actually joked, and this is kind of accurate. So people were joking, the slate is kind of the car that gets built when you listen to internet commenters. And as everyone knows, especially in the enthusiast crowd, you listen to internet commenters, it's just, oh, well, everything needs to be $20,000 and manual and this, that, and the other, and that's an appealing idea. But how many people actually go out and even buy a car that's even remotely close to that? How many people say they want to bring back the manuals and then they end up going for an automatic, or, oh, we need more sports cars. And then, you see the amount of people that go from a WRX into a Tacoma. I get so many people cross shopping pickup trucks and WRXs, or, other sporty stuff. And then they go into a pickup truck and it's like, okay, well, this is exactly why they keep turning out more trucks, because they're losing all these various buyers who are flexible, and they're not like you have to be faithful to one body style forever, but like people like trying different things. And so, I think there's other components there that are tough, but it's just that internet commenter thing. And I mean, this is me too. I mean, I've been saying for years there should be a bare bones car with roll up windows that's cheap, and they've clearly listened to those internet commenters and said, okay, we'll give it a try. And it's just now it'll be interesting to see what the pre-order number is like, how many people actually put their money where their mouth is and say, yes, I want something basic. And the electric thing is going to be a hurdle too, because I think a lot of that crowd doesn't want an EV. They want something bare bones and gas powered. But, I still think there's a market for it. It's just be interesting to see how big that market is. They might find the ceiling real quick. And it might be one of these, little flashes in the pan that, comes and goes. And, depending on how it's managed, it could end up being another Fisker. I hope it isn't. It sounds like they got, more money for sure, and hopefully better brains behind the scenes doing things. But, it could end up going like that too. And, sound promising, at the get-go, and then end up failing. So we'll see what happens. And also, Lancelot, thanks so much for gifting 5 memberships. I really appreciate your generosity. And looks like mostly new faces, they're able to get those. And also, Chad, thank you so much for gifting a membership. And looks like, again, another new face there for that. So thank you both so much for your generosity. I really appreciate it. And all right, so let me see. where were we here? So David's saying Hudson Motor Company. Yeah, Hudson it'd be fun to see them kind of make a comeback. And I don't know who owns that. Was that sold with? I think Hudson was kind of under the Packard sale and Rambo and all that stuff back in the 60s. So maybe that is property of Stellantis. I'm not sure what ended up happening to Hudson's rights. And Michelle says, don't see a ton of bullets around here. This was only the second time I've ever seen one. Oh, nice. Well, that's cool. You saw it. And yeah, I guess they're kind of more rare. I mean, they made, how many of those did they make? I think in 19 they made something like 2,000. I could be wrong. And then I think for 2020 they made maybe 1,500. I can't remember. It's been a while. I'm a little foggy, but yeah, so maybe they're actually kind of rare. That's cool. Now Raphael says, I didn't see it on the road, but I saw a Suzuki Samurai parked in someone's driveway. That's cool. And Jay says, hey, Matt, just purchased a 26 Mark V Super Premium 6-speed with hazelnut interior. That's awesome. Just wanted to know if adding H&R lowering springs and hub-centric wheel spacers voids the warranty. So, I mean, I don't think it would. So with warranties, if you look at the Magnuson-Moss Act, if there is a warranty dispute, the dealer has to prove that your modifications screwed up the car. As far as so if your motor blows, your lowering spring shouldn't have anything to do with that. So you should be safe as far as that goes. So if you're worried about your engine warranty, don't screw with the engine, and everything else should be fine. Likewise, though, if you're worried about your adaptive dampers going bad, or you're worried about other things related to that, if you're worried about ball joints failing or something, if that goes, they'll say, oh, well, your wheel spacers would cause these to fail prematurely, or those lowering springs weren't properly paired to the struts, and so that's why the struts go bad, or so it's always whatever is connected to those components that is going to be the warranty issue. So I mean, that's the way I understand it. Not perfect advice, but that's generally the way that I've understood aftermarket modifications to go. So I don't think you would have an issue with either of those. I mean, the lowering springs especially, I think GR Performance sells lowering springs. So, even just because you went for a different brand, I mean, that's a very common thing. I don't think there should be an issue there. The wheel spacers, though, those do, put extra stress on those splines and stuff. So that could be something I could see them taking issue with. Again, strictly for that suspension component, and those wear, things. But that's pretty much it. And most of that stuff, you're not making warranty claims for that kind of stuff. They'll just usually say those types of things are wear items anyway, regardless of how slowly or fastly you go through those things. I guess fast, not fastly. Sorry. So that's probably what I would say. But maybe others here can chime in with their advice too. But that's typically the way I understood it. So you should be okay with this too. And you can also ask the dealer. Maybe some dealers, depending on who you're dealing with, if you have a good service center, they'll be straight up with you and be like, okay, if you're going to do this, make sure you do this, or whatever. But yeah, I think you should be okay, most likely, as far as motor warranty and that kind of stuff goes. And Tiger Force says, hey Matt, just wanted to stop by and say I really enjoy the channel. You make high quality reviews. Cheers. Thank you so much. I appreciate that, Tiger. And thanks for watching the channel. It's every viewer helps to keep this going. So thank you so much for that. And Jorge says something about the new Elantra's lines remind me of 5th gen Charger. Okay. Yeah, I think I can kind of see that. I have to do a side by side, but yeah, I think I can see where you're going there. That's fun. And Michelle says, pivoting from cars for a second, I'm sure you've seen now the price hikes on the current Apple stuff. Makes me glad I bought my MacBook Pro M4 last year. I bet you timed that pretty well. Yeah. It sucks too because I don't know. I don't have any money to upgrade computers or anything, but I have an M1, MacBook Pro, and it's still fine. like 99.9% of the time. So I don't really have any need to do anything, upgrade wise. But you know, I'm excited for this rumored new MacBook Pro coming here, at the end of this year or this fall or something. It's gonna have a new design because I like doing the new design years whenever those ones come out. That's always kind of more exciting than just like, oh, it's faster or whatever. So I was excited about the new design, but yeah, man, their price is going up. I mean, I'm glad I got the 17 Pro here this past year. Because I'm usually like a new iPhone every 2 years kind of person, especially because I do so much work on my phone here. I film now a lot of the videos on my phone and a lot of the B-roll at least and stuff. So like, it's important for me to have, a good camera and all that. But this camera is really good, and I don't think they're going to make wild improvements in the next few years. That if they're super expensive, I mean, I'm excited for the potentially edgeless one next year. That's going to have the screen go right off onto the side or whatever. If that actually comes to fruition and is actually well done and cool, that would be tempting, but it just comes down to the price point. Because if they're getting crazy expensive, this 17 Pro should last me, a good long while. And I may actually just be the type that just says, I'm not buying a new phone every couple of years. And I think a lot of people will feel that way. I know, I mean, Apple's stock took a dive once they announced that. And while we're on that topic, getting back to the cars, this is something, I mean, I'm not 100% sold on this idea yet, so don't let me fear monger here. But like, I think this is going to affect cars and significantly, because the building blocks are all here for another giant price jump in cars. We have inflation back at multiple months now of 3 to 4% inflation. It's saying. And then we also now have these chip shortages that are going to be starting back up again because of all this AI demand, which how do we pump the brakes on AI? Because I feel like no one actually really likes it that much, and yet it's all being shoved down our throats and making everything worse, whether it's our water, whether it's our energy bills, or it's the fact that now we're not going to be able to get memory for anything, and all the other stuff we actually care about and actually buy is going to be more expensive. Like, I'm like, it's like one of those things, like, are we just all gonna not blink, or are we gonna I feel like there's, I don't know, maybe tons of people use AI, so I don't know, maybe we're just in the minority, or I'm in the minority just ranting here like the crotchety old man telling people to get off my yard. But I don't know, it just seems weird. But anyway, as far as those chips, if Apple had to make these things go up several $100s, and they have prime leverage to get the best rates and to get the chips the easiest, they get the best contracts, high volumes, if it's that bad for them that they need to pass that along, which I also don't buy that they actually need to pass anything along. They've got trillions. They can just take a loss, but then their shareholders crap a brick, and it's we have to play the world's smallest violin for these billionaires. But they don't have to increase the price, but if to keep everyone happy aside from the consumer, they have to raise prices. Expect the car companies to do the same thing. And I know Subaru just announced 2027 pricing already, I think for BRZ and for I think Solterra. They just announced pricing for Solterra, and it's going to be the same. I don't know if they did that prematurely or if they're truly confident that the next year they're just going to, roll with that price. And if they end up getting screwed by chip costs, then they'll just eat it. I don't know. But I think that I don't know if people will actually price it in for 27. They may have to play catch up and say, oh, we had a bunch of losses, so now we need to raise prices for 28. I don't know which way it's going to go, but I wouldn't be surprised if you see larger than normal price increases for 2027 model years here, going forward. Especially also 27 is the model year where they're now, having to comply with this new emissions thing, which is why Ridgeline won't make it into the 2027 model year. And all these other cars need to comply. And for some of these companies, there might be some extra costs involved with slight modifications to comply with that new emissions regulation. And what's the other thing too? Oh, and driver monitoring sensors. So the IHS has said that 2027, they're going to make intelligent speed regulation software, which I think is going to be mostly just a warning system. We haven't had any details about that yet, but I believe 2027 is when that tech is supposed to come in, which most cars that already have automatic emergency braking, which is everything, can probably figure out speed limits already. So I don't know how much extra cost there's going to be with that, but there's more talk of just adding more driver monitoring sensors to things more and more. And so I think that also could start driving up the price of some of these cars that don't have that already. So I'm just starting to watch a storm form, and I'm watching the dark clouds overhead. And again, I want to be optimistic, but I'm pretty convinced we're going to be hit with another. I don't know if it's going to be quite as bad where it's like 30 is the new 20 as far as car sales. Hopefully 40 isn't the new 30. But I think you could see some of that, and I think the Apple stuff is just the tip of the iceberg of this, and it's coming again at the worst possible time as far as people being crunched, and it could not be pretty. I mean, Apple is a very high end brand, not value shoppers typically, people who have money to burn. But if like there's already that kind of reaction to them raising prices, and they've got the money to cushion the blow, these other companies, there's going to be a lot of stuff going under because people are just going to quit buying, and it's going to really wreck their volumes, because people can't just forever keep saying, oh sure, yeah, I'll pay more, I'll pay more. Wages aren't going up fast enough to say, oh, I'm just going to keep paying more. I'm going to start paying 40 for my $30,000 car. I'm going to start paying another $300 for my $1,000 phone. You can't keep paying 30% more for everything every few years, again, unless you've got tons of money to burn. So it's just, yeah. So I mean, that is kind of car related, because all these cars run on all these chips. Another perk of the slate. I mean, it does have chips, but not nearly as much. But I think you might see more and more companies actually go back to simpler stuff. There's actually, I can't remember where I was hearing this, but there is talk of, like, because they see these RAM shortages coming, we may see more analog gauges come back into cars, because those take less RAM and chips than having a whole TV screen in front of you. And I think that could kind of be a blessing in disguise, because a lot of us are kind of burned out on all the screens. And I think, again, if we're listening to the internet, people say they want less screens, and I think companies will say, okay, well, we can't get the RAM chips anyway, and people say they want this, let's go backwards. And I think you may actually see some of that. I don't know how much and which segments will kind of do that first and how they'll spin it, but yeah, it could actually really affect a lot of things. We'll have to see, but I'm very much on the edge of my seat to see how prices and all this kind of change, because the chip thing, no one's really talking about it still yet, but it could royally screw things up, and that's before China gets brave with Taiwan and really screws things up. Hopefully that doesn't happen, but the AI thing is absolutely a problem that's causing these chips to go crazy. And anyway, though, back on topic here. Tumbling Mustard says, twice today I saw a new Nissan and thought, wow, that actually looks good. It's confusing me. Yeah, it's nice to see that they've gotten back to some good designs. I agree. And thanks for stopping by, Tumbling Mustard. And Chad, also, thank you for a super chat. Sorry I missed it till now, but he says, FIFA tourist vids give hope. They love the U.S. People. Yes, it's very exciting to see. And I even saw just this past week the ranch thing. Apparently, a bunch of Europeans have discovered ranch dressing, and they've been trying to bring it home with them so much that the TSA has posted pictures of suitcases full of ranch. I mean, please put this in your checked luggage. You cannot carry on giant bottles of ranch on no plane in your carry-on luggage. So just fun things like that. And yeah, I think it is very much giving hope that people elsewhere understand that we are definitely not all on the same page as many others in this country, and all that. And that's good to hear, because it sucks to be grouped into a stereotype that you don't fit, and you don't deserve. So it's great to see people making that distinction, even though I wouldn't blame them for not making that distinction. But I'm glad that it seems like many people have kind of discovered that, and that's great. And Jorge, thanks so much for being a member for 51 months now. Really appreciate the long-term support here over 4 years. He says, since we're talking about Apple and cars, what's your take on the Luce interior? The Luce interior, I actually don't hate. It's not how I would have, done it, but if that was wrapped around an attractive exterior, I would have no problems with it. I mean, I have concerns about the swivel screen, especially on a fast EV. That like, how do you make that, not obtuse to like move, but have it be strong enough that it, isn't moving when you're doing high performance driving? I don't know. But yeah, I actually don't mind the interior, and I love the idea of them doing a sedan, and it's a 5-seater. It's got a bench seat in the back. I love that. I mean, there's some cool stuff about it, and yeah, I'm just, it was such a missed opportunity. I was so excited for that car, and now even I don't like it. And I was one of the few, people that was ready to simp for that car, and cheerlead for it. But unfortunately, just no. That's a face only a mother can love, in my opinion. And maybe eventually it'll grow on us and it'll have less of a shock value. But it just, even if it doesn't look bad, it just doesn't look like a special Ferrari. And yeah, it's there's so many good looking cars still these days. Like there's so many better choices. Um, and yeah, if you want to showboat around in some expensive EV, just get a Rolls Royce Spectre. Drop dead gorgeous, fantastic, proven BMW EV powertrain underneath. And I've driven one. They're super comfy, obviously. But that's also very expensive. It's $500,000. And if you want to virtue signal with your very expensive EV, that's a great way to do it. So I don't see any reason why the Luce is going to be a success, because you put that up against the Spectre, good luck. Like, and honestly, the Spectre has probably got just as big of a back seat, honestly, just 4 seats, but huge back seats still in that too. So yeah, no thanks on the Luce, and that's coming from a big Ferrari fan. And Nico's got always chime in with the ooh EVs. And let me see. Brian says hello, good evening, everyone. Thanks for stopping by, Brian. And Chad says, have you seen Dolly Parton's new gas station? I'm a bit of a fan. So of course I think it's cool. We have Buc-ee's here. Do y'all have anything like that up there? Yeah, so we have Sheets up here, and if you go to the eastern side of PA, they also have Wawa's, which is another kind of thing that's similar, but not nearly as grand as Buc-ee's. No, they're not as big, but it's similar, kind of like fun, kitschy, vibe to them, and a little bit more of a culture around them than a regular gas station kind of thing. But I saw that Dolly Parton did a new thing, but I haven't looked into it at all or seen any coverage on what exactly about it is different than a Buc-ee's. But hey, there's lots of opportunities for all this kind of stuff. And I think, it is also a good thing as far as a future proofing standpoint. And I think Buc-ee's is actually very smart about this too, where, I think, gas is going to be around for a long time still. But I think for the EVs, like those are the ones that are going to be hanging out there a little bit longer. And, we'll see how fast infrastructure evolves here in America and how fast the batteries evolve. I mean, I don't think we're going to be very long in a period of, sitting around at a charger. I think that's going to be a pretty short-lived thing. It's only going to last another, 5 or so years before batteries get so fast with charging. But we don't need, and they have such more range that you don't need to charge, publicly unless you're on a road trip. But I think, it's smart to say, hey, this is a hangout space, because there will be more people spending more time there, instead of the fast in and out 5-minute, people that, have, their record breaking cannonball runs where they gotta, be in a gas station as little time as possible. I think making it an experience is a very smart thing. We're a very car centric culture. You see the 7-Eleven meets and that kind of culture. And, it, I think is very smart to lean into all that stuff for sure. And Luke says, I've never had a sporty car. I've always gone for practical stuff. I'm considering something sporty for my next car, but I'm afraid I'd regret the lack of space or rear-wheel drive in the winter. Well, I mean, nowadays, there's some areas where you don't need to have that kind of a compromise, depending on which kind of sporty vehicle you're looking at, but like Charger, for example, the gas ones, all-wheel drive is standard. You've got a bunch of space, a bunch of power, but it's got a giant rear hatch, so you can still fit a big screen TV back there. You can still flip the seats down and have a big, long space. So I think stuff like Charger really shows the kind of the future of the sporty car, in my opinion, of not having those compromises and, tempting more people out of their SUVs and trucks back into a sporty vehicle because there's less compromise than there used to be. We're not talking about, a GR86 size trunk, which is enough for, maybe an extra large pizza, and that's about it. Like now it's actually a lot better. And so I think that there are some like that. But I think for you, I would say if you're worried about lack of space, and rear wheel drive, and Charger's really kind of the perfect solution. Mustang, obviously rear wheel drive, but that might be changing soon too. If they actually do this hybrid one, I mean, they're saying they're going to have hybrid everything in Ford eventually. So when hybrid Mustang comes, I think that could be a great alternative as well, because Mustang is a very great daily driver. So spacious. Obviously, I lived with them for 10 years, in that interior pretty much. They're great. So I think once that goes all-wheel drive, you don't have to worry there either. I mean, even some others that are a little bit, if you're going a little bit more expensive, like the 4 Series, even the 2 Series is a fairly spacious car. It depends on how big you are with that one. But like 2 Series also, you can get that with all-wheel drive, really nice little sporty car. And there's others too, but I think I would lean more towards the bigger stuff if you're, worried about regret as far as space. Stay away from the GR86 and the Miatas and stuff, and go for some of the bigger Grand Tour kind of sporty cars. I think you're less likely to have regret there. Chaz, as I mentioned before, but if your car is close to 100,000 miles, I get your O2 sensors checked because they're covered by EPA law. Interesting. I don't think I knew that. So they'll, by law, they have to, like, do they have to replace them, or is it like a warranty kind of thing? That's it. I never have come across that. I'm curious to learn more. Let me see here. Also, I see Chad. Also, thank you so much for another super chat here. He says our Buc-ee's has solar panels and everything charging. That's cool. That's awesome that they've. Yeah, I think a lot of the Buckeyes right now have the EV charging, and that's great. A lot of the sheets around here also do have that. They're actually very early adopters of adding the Tesla superchargers. But I'm waiting for some of them to add some more CCS and like I think they're starting to partner up with like Iona, I think, to do some of the other, like NACS non-Tesla stuff and all that. So curious to see how long they stick with just Tesla for some of that. Tu Chang is in the house. Thanks so much for remember for 4 years now too. He says, speaking of missed opportunities, that Cybercab, put a glass hatch on it and make a little coupe out of it. The architecture is already there. Yeah, that is weird that they are not doing that. I mean, it sounds like they're starting to wise up a little bit with like, didn't they just announce they're going to finally do like this stretched Chinese version of the Model Y is going to be sold in America now, so that you actually have a more usable third row in a Model Y. So that tells me that, they're maybe looking more pragmatically now and actually listening to what the market is, probably wanting. So, I mean, that's, I guess, the polar opposite of the Cybercab. But yeah, but I get your point though too. Yeah, as far as if we're looking at like, an Ioniq coupe, Cybercab could be a Model 3 coupe. And a Model 3 coupe would be cool. Again, assuming, you're not worried about, the Elon stuff. Like objectively, like that would be a cool combo because Model 3 is a great car. A coupe version should also be a great car. So yeah, I agree. I think that does have potential. How much, I don't know, but you're right. I mean, that with that, they're already building them. And also I think that they are, not building them as fast as they were expecting to because they're having some issues with the robo-taxi rollout, I think. And a lot of these cars are actually being remote driven or just actually have a driver in them. So if that's going to not take off the way that they are predicting it will, which is my prediction, then you have this design, you've got the ability to make it instead of, not building any more robo taxis because they suck potentially, just make it a regular coupe version of the Model 3, sell a bunch of them to the people who want that, or just want the best efficiency. Because I guarantee you, even with just regular Model 3 stuff underneath of it, that aerodynamic package in that car, you would have way more range, and it could actually kind of get back to challenging the Lucids as far as range and efficiency. So yeah, it'd be cool to see that for sure. And Also, Chad, thanks so much for gifting another membership. I really appreciate that. And Liam, thank you so much for a very generous super chat. He says, "Hey Matt, I know we've chatted about the new 3 Series EV on here, but just wanted to say I've seen the new BMW M3 EV red concept online, and wow, that looks amazing. It does. I love it. Yeah, and some people have said it has a Pontiac kind of look to the front of it in a way, and I don't disagree. And I also love that about it. Like it's kind of giving off like Firebird a little bit, and I'm just so relieved to see good-looking BMWs again. I hope that trend, I desperately hope that trend continues. But yeah, I am all about that car. I mean, even the regular i3 looks fantastic and is a really cool little car. Yeah, if I would totally rock one of those if I had the money and just wanted a nice little, quick, because I love small coupes. It's why I love the Ioniq 6. I was one of the 5 people that actually like that car. But like I love it's so huge on the inside, so much space, but yet you can whip it around. It's easy to park. It's nice and tight, because it's so small. And like I envision the i3, excuse me, being the very same way. And then the M3 version with 1,000 horsepower and the what do they call it? The something of the heart of joy, I think, is what they call, the ECU that's going to be doing this hyper precise power distribution to all 4 wheels, because it's quad motor and everything. Like, it's just going to be so impressive, I think. And I wish I had the money. I would totally scoop up one of those new electric M3s if I had the money. I 100% would, because it sounds like they're going to do the same kind of thing as Ioniq 5N, but in a more mature package. And also thank you for the Jules gift there, over to that. But yeah, like that, I'm super pumped for that car. I'm so sad BMW doesn't work with me, because I really want to drive that one, and even the regular i3, but especially the M version. That has the potential to be like car of the year next year, in my opinion. But Anyway, yeah, thank you so much for the very kind super chat. I really appreciate it. And Chad, thank you also for a super chat again. He says they legally have to replace for no cost the O2 sensor. Interesting. Well, that's great advice. So yes, if anyone's coming up on 100,000 miles, get that checked and get yourself a free O2 sensor if it's looking like they need to replace that. That's awesome. And let me see here. So where were we? So I know we've fallen behind. I apologize, everyone, with all the long-winded answers here. So where are we here? Jorge says, I saw a Gen 2 convertible Corvette. Not sure, but it looks slightly lifted. The couple in there had to be at least in their late 60s, so totally understand the modification. Interesting. I'm curious, yeah, why they would have lifted it, or that's unless they're doing a gasser build. If you are familiar with those, Jorge, if it was something like that. With gassers, usually 50s stuff, and Gen 2 Corvette was 60s. But I don't know, maybe that, yeah, I don't know. That's interesting. That's quite the spot. And Luke says, sometimes I get the desire for something like a BRZ, but I'm just so afraid of the fun wearing off and me being annoyed with the small space inside, especially if I want to take multiple passengers. Yeah. And that's where, I think, again, something bigger would be a little bit of, the safer side. But yeah, there's a fear there that, you get buyer's remorse with something really small and sporty. So that's why, yeah, taking a baby step into, something, or even just like a smaller sedan could kind of be a nice, leap. If you want to go to a Civic Si or an Elantra N or something, for example, see how that feels. And then if you're saying, okay, this is still kind of big, you go into something smaller. I think also like a WRX or something could be kind of a nice fit. You have a nice back seat still, but it's a, reasonably sized sedan, sporty, manual. You got the all-wheel drive there. Something like a WRX actually might fit you okay, as far as what your mentality is right now and where you're at with that. Worth a test drive too if you haven't driven these vehicles yet. See, is it actually as tight inside in some of these cars as you thought it was? And really just have a sit down with yourself of like, okay, well, how often do I drive people around? do I like driving people around, or should I just tell them to get, take their own ride, or whatever. I mean, there's all kinds of things that go into that, and everyone's lifestyle is different, so there's no universal right answer for anyone. It's just whatever, how you land on some of these things. But yeah, it's a choice, and it's it's something it's hard to commit to sometimes. And that's kind of why the Mustangs always were kind of a nice happy medium for me, because you can put someone in the backseat in a pinch. Do you do it all the time? Definitely not. But it's there if you need it. And I think it's kind of just nice to have versus some of the dedicated, two seaters, or the BRZ, which might as well be a two seater, because that back seat is useless for most of. I mean, I know my old BRZ days, I did put a couple of people, poor unfortunate souls, back there. But yeah, it's not great. And actually, even just this past week with the GRD6, I tried putting my daughter back there, and even like I didn't put the car seat in and all that kind of stuff, but I was just like, just sit back there, let's just see how even she fits. And her legs aren't long enough to actually have her knees break over the edge of the seat yet, so a little bit tricky. But like even she was like not really that comfortable back there as it was, and if she got taller and stuff, it would probably just be even worse. So I love the BRZ and the GRD6, but I think it's got to either be a better two-seater or a better two-door coupe, or stick with four doors, which I'm fine with, because again, I'm team GR Corolla. Cheers, everyone. But BRZ is kind of hard to live with depending on your lifestyle. So that's why, I think the muscle stuff sells so much better for a good reason, because it's a little easier to live with that. And Chad says, did you see the DOE had a competition where they had to improve the engineering of the Cadillac Lyriq? I saw it and immediately thought of you. Yeah, it was kind of like an eco challenge thing. I just briefly saw like a picture about it, but I didn't read into it. But I need to find out more about that, because that's very interesting that they did that. And yeah, I'm curious what the results were, because the Lyriq, it's not the most efficient EV, that's for sure. So definitely some room for improvement there. That's cool though. You have to look into that some more. And Chad says, my paycheck covered everything a few years ago. Now I have to DoorDash 3 to 4 hours after work and 4 to 6 hours on my off days to make ends meet. I like DoorDashing, but I'm old and tired. Yeah. No, I hear you. I mean, and it's a similar kind of thing with YouTube, which is different, obviously, because for me, it also comes down to the video views and stuff. But I'm right there with you. I used to be able to do 2 videos a week, and get over 1 million views a month, and life was easy, good. I had the money to buy a $50,000 bullet, no problem. And things were a lot easier. And then the 2020 started hitting, and costs went up, and my wages did not, and my views went down. And and now that's why I'm working 70 plus hours a week myself, just trying to churn out as many videos as possible, doing these Car Buzz articles as much as possible, doing more pitches to companies for ads, and all these other back and forth things that are time killers. And so trying new channels with the junkyard thing. It's we're all kind of doing it in our own ways, but I think a lot of people are working way more, and are less satisfied with their quality of life than they were before. And it all goes back to the money at the end of the day. And I think a lot of people voted the way they did, hoping that money would get better for them. And I think most people, that probably isn't the case. For some, maybe it is, but yeah, I think from what I've seen, it's a lot of us are struggling out there, and I can relate, Chad. So I'm sorry to hear that you got to do that, but hopefully you have some fun adventures, maybe DoorDashing a little bit there, and hopefully we get some improvements here someday that help us to all be able to enjoy life a little bit more. But I think it's going to take a lot of big change and upheaval to get us there, because this is not a system that is going to fix itself overnight, and it's not going to go down without a fight, I think, But anyway, Lancelot says, last year I built a new gaming PC. The RAM kit last year was $399. Now it's almost $1,000. Holy crap. I didn't know. That's a really big price jump. Yeah. Well, okay. With that new information, yes, If that is what we start to see in cars, then there you have it. Even the RAM in a gaming PC, which is probably not far off from, especially some of these bigger screened cars, probably not quite as intense, but not far off. So there you go. Maybe you have an extra $1,000 or so, or at least another 600 minimum into a car. And most cars already go up a couple $100 every year, just with other things getting expensive just every year. So you add another 600 onto that. So it sounds like the ground is already ripe for definitely $1,000 plus price increases for every car or most cars, going forward. But that could be something where Slate, that getting back to Dozier's, mentioned about Slate, that could be an area where they have a huge advantage if their stuff really doesn't get any more expensive, or at least the RAM, is non-existent pretty much in that. Then, you have all these cars that have a wider gap, and maybe Maverick was 32, now it's 40, or this electric Maverick thing was going to be 30, but now we got to do all this RAM stuff, and now it's 35. Now you got a 10 grand gap, and that's going to stay where it's at and only get worse if these costs go up for these other things and Slate stays exactly where it's at. So I think there's a lot to be determined still, but I'm hoping that the Slate will be kind of, if nothing else, a nice band-aid on this crap show of rising car prices and rising everything prices. It's just good to see a car come out under 25 grand that's, in my opinion, fun, quirky, 2 doors, even if it is a truck. I think it'll be cool. I'm looking forward to it. And I'm so bummed they didn't invite me on the stuff. I'm just not cool enough to be on their list, sadly. But hopefully someday they'll deem me worthy of Slate coverage. We'll see. Let me see. Chad, thank you for a super chat. He says, BRZ backseat for you poor unfortunate souls. I'm glad you enjoyed the reference. Two, thanks for stopping by with another super chat here. He says, don't admit to your crimes. You allegedly put your daughter in the back of a GT6 without a car seat, allegedly. Well, we were just in the driveway. I would definitely not go for a drive without her in a car seat. But she just got to try it on for size there, and yeah, like that's why I didn't want to move the car, because she was not comfortable. But yeah, thank you too. And Lance, thank you for our super chat as well. He says it's a 64 gig kit, and with RGB. Gotcha. So yeah, maybe that is more RAM than most cars use. I don't know exactly what is in cars these days, but it's probably less than that, I'm guessing. Although I don't know, maybe some of this other stuff as far as the computing power for stability controls and all these types of things that are fancier and fancier these days, maybe that stuff does require that much RAM. I just genuinely don't know how much RAM is in a car. That's a really good question. I should deep dive that and see what is the actual range of what is in cars these days, because I am completely clueless on that. So you've given me some homework there, Lancewoth. I appreciate it. Let me see here. So where were we? So Chad's impressed by the ROI on the RAM there. And Michelle says, totally agreed with all your points. Definitely is a ripple effect. I'm interested in what the new MacBook Pro redesign will look like. Apparently it may use an OLED screen. Yeah, which would be so great. Be great to get rid of the notch. And be great to, just have maybe a little bit of a thinner design. I know people say, no, like keep it thick and have a huge battery and, stuff as much CPU as you can in there. But yeah, it's a little bit bulky. I mean, I'd like to see someday them be able to downsize while still having top-notch computing power. I think, especially the new, Apple Silicon stuff is just so fast. It's like a law of diminishing returns. It's like, okay, sure, yes, you can make it twice as fast again, but do we need to have Pixar levels of computing power, in our average MacBook Pros? I don't know, but it's I wouldn't mind it, getting a little bit lighter, even though I know they have MacBook, Air and stuff, but I'd like it to be a little bit less chunky potentially. Lancelot says the joke in tech circles is they have RAM, get them. That's funny. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like copper wiring in houses and stuff like that. I wonder if that'll be the new generation of car thefts. Honestly, this stuff that's, I mean, obviously, they always try and go for probably expensive stuff regardless, but like if the expensive stuff will especially have a target on its back, if it's like, ooh, that one's got a ton of RAM, man, that sounds so like Tron, like that's maybe what cars get stolen for in the future, but maybe that's where we're headed. I don't know. And Dozier says seeing base hybrid Mavericks on Car Gurus for 26 and a half, discounted from 29 to 30. Okay. Well, that's nice if there's some discounts on them. That's great. Because from what I heard, Maverick was actually pretty hot right now, especially the hybrid versions, because, hybrid and gas prices. So, yeah, but that's nice if there's some discounts. So if realistically, yeah, we're factoring in that, and Slate, I'm guessing, won't have discounts, at least initially. Then, yeah, if it's basically the same as Maverick, that's an uphill battle for sure. I didn't realize Mavericks were being discounted that much, but if that's the case, then yeah, they got a problem there. And again, they'll just have to lean on that base that I talked about earlier that just likes the disconnected, simple kind of approach. But that might be a very small amount of people. We'll see. And Michelle says, I got a new phone, watch, iPad, and AirPods in the last 2 years, so won't be needing anything new for a long time. Yeah, that's a good move. And honestly, this is why, I mean, this is obviously, I did not foresee all the craziness of the past year and a half, but, I had a bad feeling about some of this stuff. And that's why when I got my Fiat, I said, I'm locking in a cheap EV for as long as possible. And that's why I did a long lease. I did a 42-month lease on that, which is, anyone who knows leasing, that is like the upper end pretty much of where you can go with a lease. But I'm like, this is basically going to last me almost until the end of 2028. July of 2028 is when that lease is up. And that lines up with other things, getting close to changing as well. So, but that's because I knew, I'm like, I'm not going to be able to get a $130 a month car in car payment, especially on the electric side, probably ever again. And I knew that. And that's why I was like, yes, I can live without a car still. I did it for about a year after selling the Bullet. But I'm like, I'm not going to get this opportunity again. And this is essentially a free car almost with how cheap it is. I mean, not like $130 is nothing, but like for a brand new car that's super efficient and stuff, like I'm very happy with my decision to go for that Fiat. And it, thankfully, knock on wood, has been flawless, at least for the first slightly under 2,000 miles I've got on it so far, racking them up very slowly. And it's sat for basically 2 months now without moving, aside from occasionally moving around the driveway. But yeah, it's, I did the same kind of thing. I got a new Apple Watch about a year and a half ago or so. And we bought a TV right as the tariffs were being announced, because we figured that was going to go up. Thankfully, that hasn't gone too crazy, but got a better deal on a TV, pre-tariff, and all these things. We kind of did a little bit of that, to kind of future-proof ourselves. So, yeah, it's definitely something. If you're in the tech world and you're on, looking to get something that hasn't gone up in price yet, do it now. I'm actually kind of considering, because it's crazy. My camera setup is still super old. And I mean, I don't know. So I have a Panasonic G85, which I bought in 2018. That's the main camera that, faces me on, that's mounted on the windshield. And I like that that's an actual, DSLR. It's a mirrorless, DSLR, but frameless or whatever it is. So it's not full frame, but it's, I think a little bit of higher quality in my opinion than the random GoPros everyone throws on the windshield. So I like having that, and that's super solid, pretty simple. Like I'm not worried about that breaking. And I have an Insta360 that's only maybe 4 or 5 years old that I use for the forward facing. So that one I think is good for a while. But my side shot GoPro is still a GoPro Hero 4, which everyone, when I'm on a media drive, everyone is like cracking up at the fact that I'm using a Hero 4 still, because it's ancient. But like the battery, it's still the original battery, believe it or not, still flawlessly, still holds a charge enough to do at least a full car review. Typically, it can actually do almost 2 full car reviews. And it's not 4K. So if you actually really are discerning stuff and you're watching the reviews that are now in 4K, you'll see that looks a little crappier, because it has to just upscale that to 4K the best it can, and also like a 10-year-old camera up to 4K, but maybe even more than 10 at this point. But like, I'm like, I don't have the money for this, but I'm like, I should probably try and get a new GoPro just to future proof myself here before those start going crazy. So at least because I know that Hero 4, I'm lucky with how long it's lasted, but it cannot last forever. I don't know. But so I'm kind of in the same boat. I'm like, okay, should I go out and get stuff now? But I recommend any of you, yeah, get stuff before prices go up, because they will go up, unless some miracle happens or something magically pops in the AI world immediately and immediately cuts off the demand from that side. But unless AI pops hard and fast, yeah, it's going to be something you're going to be paying a lot more here in the future, near future. I think they're saying fall into winter. It's going to be, kind of hitting right around prime shopping season, which will be interesting. But anyway, let me see. Where were we? I think a couple other things might have come in here. So I apologize. Yeah, just from two. Thank you so much, too, for another super chat. He says, that's the kind of crime that will put you in the darkest parts of the basement, and a list, a Superworks fan list. Yeah, that's it. And I hope you're enjoying the basement there, too. And also hope you're doing well. Hope the Tacoma, he picked up a Tacoma last year. Speaking of also, future-proofing ourselves against stuff. He picked up his new car here not too long ago. I hope you're enjoying the Tacoma still, too. And let me see here. All right, I'm going to get caught up so we're not too far behind on questions here for the last hour. Let me see. So Jorge says, the exterior is not worthy of the Ferrari, but with the right materials and great interactivity, it's a promising blend of tech, physical controls, warmth, and modern design. I agree. I would agree with that for the interior for sure. Yeah, they did some nice stuff. I like the switches, even in the roof are a cool idea. The steering wheel, I think, is kind of cool. They did some really nice stuff. I like the gauges, analog gauges. Speaking of that trend again, I think they did some really good stuff there. Yeah. And let me see. Marcus says, been subscribed since 2017 and wanted to say thanks for all the years of content and sharing your journey with us. Thank you so much for being subscribed for so long. I really appreciate that. And thank you for watching all these years of content. But he says, random question. Is there a dream track focused car you'd wish you experienced or owned? Yeah, there's a few. I mean, dedicated track cars aren't really my thing. But if I were, one of the ones I really love, and I think it's kind of out of focus, but it is up there, is the Ferrari FXXK. Is one of them that I really, really would love. If I'm insanely stupid rich, Bugatti Bolide is the other one that's like wild that I would love. And also, the more track-focused versions of the Gordon Murray T50. Again, in some world where I had insane, hideous wealth, those would be probably the top ones for me. And yeah, I'm trying to think of some others. I'd say those are probably the top ones. I mean, there's the track 911s that would be fun and crazy and cool. But for me, it's probably something that like is so fast. I mean, the 911s are as well, but something that's so fast, I can only really open it up and do it justice on track, and it'd be something, like those Ferraris and the Bugatti and stuff. That would be, and even like, just like the idea of even a regular Bugatti, like even the what is it, the Pure Sport versions of the Chiron, like, that's kind of got the arrow and stuff like that. Would be, I think it would just be a riot to like be in something super fast like that on track, even though yes, it's heavy and maybe it's not the most amazing track car, compared to the lighter stuff, but like that kind of stuff would be really fun for me on track again if I was so fortunate. So yeah, that's a fun question. Thanks for asking, and thanks again for all your support all these years. And let me see. So Chad says QX60 coupe version, QX65. Who is that for? Well, with that one, I think it's more so just like an RX competitor, because they don't have that. And RX is the best seller in that segment. It's a hugely popular segment for luxury brands. And outside of RX, you have like Lincoln Nautilus. But there aren't a ton of direct competitors. You have stuff like MDX, but that's 3 rows. And as we learned with Mazda, and actually me talking to Mazda, they said there is absolutely a stigma around 3 rows. And I've actually since then kind of talked to others who kind of have reinforced like, oh yeah, like, and especially because again, you got to keep in mind, like we were talking about last week, the average new car buyer is in their 50s. The person who's actually spending the money, who's going out and buying a new car, that's the average age. And those types of people don't often want a 3 row. Some of them, maybe if they're grandparents and stuff, they like having the third row. Because there are some, I actually know personally some people who are in that kind of a mindset where they like having something with a third row they can drop if they don't need it, but they like having it for grandkids or whatever. But like a lot of people just like they want something like that, but they want 2 rows, and that's why CX70 is that. They thought it was worth a new name and slightly tweaked styling just to say, look, it's it's a 2 row, it's a different thing, and remove that stigma. And I think same thing. There is probably, a lot of these people that, would like to have a QX60, but then they say, oh, it's 3 rows. It's just, Pathfinder. It's too family oriented. But then you show them the QX65 and magically, again, because we're not talking about car people usually, we're talking about average people who don't understand the differences and can't see through this stuff. They see QX65 and they say, oh, that's something new. That's something different. It's not a QX60, even though it kind of is, but it's not a QX60 to them. And, it's an RX competitor. And all of a sudden they're in that very lucrative ball game of RX competitors. And so I think that one makes a ton of sense. It's a little bit harder to justify whenever we're talking about other RX competitors that then just go for a sportier roofline, like, Mercedes GLE or BMW X5, like those don't have a third row anymore in America. I think maybe GLE you can option it on possibly, but like no one gets the option. But realistic, and it's a useless third row anyway. And like X5 offered it for a year or two and then gave up. But like, so you have, like those, but then like with Mercedes, they have GLE Coupe, and it's like, okay, well, you already have GLE. Do you need to have the coupe? I mean, those sell well enough that they've kept them around for quite a while as well. Although it sounds like that might be ending here after not this one, but the next generation might be the last supposedly of those. But like, that's the whole thing. It's just trying to appeal to basically those 50 and 60-year-olds who want something stylish. Maybe they had sporty cars in the past, but again, they don't want to get down into some low sporty sedan or coupe or something. And so these sporty SUVs kind of fit the bill. And give them a lot of space for all their hobbies or whatever, and I think that's kind of why you're seeing that segment kind of expand. And I think it's just going to keep on doing that for sure. And Michelle says, all the Buc-ee's I've been to have had a good amount of EV chargers, always a fair amount of them being utilized. That's great to see and great to hear too, especially in Texas. That's awesome. And Luke says, but at the same time, a non-practical car might feel like more freedom from the fun driving, not having to worry about cleaning as big of an interior. You're right. That's the other side of the coin, and that it again just all comes down to how you feel about those things. I think especially, I don't know, exactly what your parking situation is like and your money situation, but if there's a sporty car you have in mind that's like on the older side, that could be a fun way to kind of dip your toes into it. Like keep your Maverick, and don't do anything about if you can add on a sporty car and have that if you find, because this is why a lot of people do have a sporty weekend car. They don't want to live with it all week. They don't want it to be their only car, but they are fortunate enough to be in the position of having a weekend car. And that's what that's for. It's for those, drives where you have that, freedom, that fun, and just that different feeling. It's not even sporty cars. This is why a lot of Wranglers are also weekend, runabouts, because it's not a car you actually want to daily drive, honestly. But you can go out and take the roof off, the doors off, and have fun. And honestly, that could be another alternative. I don't know how you feel about Wranglers, Luke, but another different kind of fun. You can kind of enjoy. Not even comes with a manual if you want to go that crazy with it. But like, I think that's kind of the appeal of the weekend car thing. But that doesn't have to be an expensive thing. You can get especially I think the NC Miatas are great values. Or you can get Pontiac Solstice for any of these things are like $7 or $8 grand. Fun little way to try it out. If you want to go something newer, something faster, something more impressive, then okay, I really like this. I want to keep with this. Or you can say, not for me, and probably sell it and not lose much money. If you drive it for a year, put a few thousand miles on it, you can turn around and probably not lose any money at all, and kind of scratch that itch, figure out where you are at that point, and then spend big money on something else that's not maybe quite as depreciation proof. But that's kind of a nice way to do that with some of the used stuff. And let me see. So Chad says, I have no idea what I saw today. It looked like a Sprinter from Mercedes, but it was bigger than a FedEx truck. Interesting. I mean, they do make the big Sprinters, but I wouldn't say it's bigger than a FedEx truck. And the only thing that's different, that's bigger than a FedEx truck, would be the Bright Drop trucks that GM made, which were supposed to be a bunch of, it's supposed to be the electric FedEx truck and everything, and then they ended up backpedaling, and GM got cold feet on the whole electric commercial truck sector. So maybe that's what you saw, or I'm guessing it's not that what the Rivian Amazon trucks look like, right? Because that's the only thing I can think of is the Rivian thing. But I don't know. Yeah, I'm curious. I can't think of anything else that it could be. And Chang says, stretch Model Y. So that's the ugly thing I've seen in Oakland yesterday. Probably. Yeah. And General Chicken says, hey, Matt, recently saw your Trail Seeker video and was very impressed with it. Not a direct competitor, but excluding charging and battery tech, does the Subaru feel better than a Model 3? Well, admittedly, I've not driven the new generation Model 3. My last time in one of those was in 2018 when I reviewed Sophions from Redline Reviews back when he had his. So that's my most recent experience. So it's hard to say because it's just we're talking about 8 years difference in cars. I guess, if you don't care about the battery tech, you don't care about the charging. I mean, Model 3 is a sedan and it has better grip. So I think Model 3, even the old one, is just a more sprightly vehicle as far as changing direction. But the Trail Seekers was really fun because of its lack of grip, and that could be fixed very easily. You put the same tires that a Model 3 Performance has on it onto a Trail Seeker, Michelin Pilot all season, or the other sporty all season tires. I think Trail Seeker would be even more of a rock star on a back road or in any kind of sporty environment. So I think if you're wanting sporty out of Trail Seeker, it's very easy to fix that to make it even better. But it's such good bones, in my opinion. So as far as other components, as far as feeling good, though, I don't know. Comfort, I'd say, is pretty similar. And I can't think of any other. It's been so long that I can't even remember as far as interior noise and stuff. But I'd say that's about as best as I can weigh in. I'm sure I've heard the new Model 3 has some nice improvements to it, so could be better. I did drive my buddy's Model Y recently, off camera, and it's fine. Just wasn't exciting, and I don't envision the Model 3 being wildly better from an excitement standpoint. So to me, I still like the way the power delivery is better in the Trail Seeker, and the drama of the nose lifting up and the extra body motions and stuff just make it a lot of fun. And Stefano, thanks so much. Or Stefan, thanks for stopping by. He says X5 is revealing this Friday. It'll be interesting to see how it translates the i3 styling to a larger SUV. Yeah, and I thought I saw something leak out with that a while back. Maybe they squashed it pretty quick, but I thought I saw it leak on Instagram or something. But if my recollection is correct, it is kind of similar to iX3, I think. But I'm excited for X5. I think that's their cash cow. It's a really important one for them. So I think they'll be conservative and smart with how they redo that. And should be very good, I'm sure. So I'm excited for it. Also, I see Aguan was the one who sent the 1,000 Joel, so thank you so much for that. And Chad says, I dream of DoorDash being my primary job. It's so fun because I like driving. What cars would you recommend used? Probably less than 200 miles a day. We have a house, not an apartment. So for your usage case there, if it's a lot of miles though, still if you're under 200 miles a day, that's still a lot of miles. For something like that, if you an EV is going to save you the most money if you can charge at home. If you have a level 2, dryer plug, in your driveway or garage, that would be, the way to go with a used EV. For deliveries like that. This is why so many Ubers are Teslas, and others like that. Otherwise, though, I mean, one car that I think was it you or someone else who mentioned on the live stream last time was I didn't realize this, but Toyota Crowns are apparently very popular, I think, with the Uber crowd because there's a ton of like 2023 and 2024 Toyota Crowns with 100,000 miles on them, and not like one or two, like a dozen or more. And I'm like, what's going on? The only way I can wrap my head around this is it's a more upmarket looking car, so maybe they're doing like Uber Black with them or something like that. But it's super comfortable, standard hybrid, and gets great fuel economy, great reliability, and they're like now if you want one with under 100,000 miles, you're going to be paying probably over 30 grand, but still not terrible considering it's a little nicer than a Camry. But I mean, you can't really beat a Camry if your base Camry is also right there, low 30s, gets 50 mpg. I mean, that's hard to argue with. And so especially if you want the most space, because the Crown is a little bit smaller. I think Camry, this is why Camry sales are on fire, because it's a ton of car, ton of efficiency, ton of reliability, and just really, really well done too. So it's hard to argue against Camry. That would probably be the move. Again, so you're saving yourself some money because you're definitely going to be on a hybrid or an EV if you're doing that many miles a day, in my opinion, because otherwise you're just getting killed in gas. So that's probably be one of my recommendations, even used. And it comes down to your individual price point as far as what you've got to spend. There's probably others cheaper, more expensive, but it's hard to beat a used Camry hybrid, in my opinion. And there's others that are very popular in door dashing and stuff, like Priuses, even better efficiency, if that works for you as far as size goes. Yeah, but really for that kind of a mileage where you're racking up very high miles very quickly, I'd probably still go Toyota would be the top. Honda could be fine too, but especially Toyota, and get yourself a Toyota hybrid. That's really the best advice I can say there. And also, Chad, if you really do love driving a ton, and I mean, maybe you like the human interaction of dropping stuff off for people, but it sounds like you'd really enjoy medical courier stuff. I mean, sometimes those people are doing, 500 miles a day or something. But like, if you like a lot of driving, some people that do that actually make good money, like, 6 figures or something just doing that. So like, that could be something to look into too if you're interested, because it's then there's again it's less of the interaction, it's more solitary, being on the road so much, but could be fun. I've even considered it myself if YouTube goes belly up for me, because I love driving too, but I feel like that would almost make me hate driving if I'm driving 500 miles a day. But I know Luke drives tons of miles in his 18 wheeler there, and I'm guessing hopefully he still likes driving, so maybe it's possible. But yeah, hopefully that gives you a little bit of advice there, though, Chad. And let me see. Now Yuan says, "Hi everyone. Not sure what the gift I sent is, but cheers." Well, thanks for sending it anyway. I appreciate it. And Chad says, "What happened to your left side of your forehead? Did you beat up Doug?" No, I did not. That was just from me. I was putting a bunch of boxes up in the attic, and there's this big like plastic bins that all conveniently have the nice sharp edges on them. So I was like shoving this box up through the very narrow crawl space to get into the attic, shoving it through there, and was like right like this and decided to cut my face while I was at it. So that's what happened there. I appreciate the concern. And let me see. Stefan says I actually have a Trail Seeker and an Uncharted parents' cars and had a Tesla Model 3 Performance. Oh yeah, so there you go. He says the Toyobaru EVs have a bit more personality than the Tesla. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I forgot. Yeah, you have some good insight there, Stefan. So that'd be great to hear from you for even more of that insight if you'd like. Between the two of you, you can help each other there a little bit. And Luke says I've never had a coupe before, so I'm sort of wanting to scratch that itch. Yeah, so I mean, sounds like maybe one of the bigger ones or one of the cheaper ones to try it out first could be a good move. And Michelle says I'm more practical minded, so I don't think I could live with a sporty car as my only car. I'd rather have a sporty car alongside my car. I enjoy the space in my Passat. Yeah, and I get that too. And especially as I get older, I kind of like having comfy stuff. And it's insane to say. I mean, I enjoyed that GR86 and I drove it as much as I possibly could. But that week I also had the Subaru Solterra, which you'll be seeing a review of here probably the next couple of weeks. I'm kind of working on a bit of a backlog now at this point. But the Solterra was really nice. And I was like, this is really fun. It's really fast. It's comfy. I got my, ventilated seat here, nice and smooth. Like, it was kind of a nice, like, now I'm back in a comfy car. Again, I love the GR86. I will love that car till the day I die. But like, I'm not mad about being like, oh, well, now I'm going somewhere with a family. I get to relax in the nice comfy Solterra and still punch it and, make my daughter giggle whenever I want. It's kind of nice. I'm really, appreciating the two-car garage. And obviously I've been spoiled with press cars of kind of having that luxury in a way, regardless of what car I owned, was. But like, yeah, I think the two-car garage is kind of the better way to do it once you're older, potentially. I mean, some people, you're young at heart, and I see there's people that are still driving BRZs when they're 70 and daily driving them, and that's their only car and stuff, and I love that for them. But personally, like, I like having some comfort too. I've always been a GT fan ever since the first car I bought, that Legacy GT Spec B. Speed and comfort, and I think that car really taught me to love Grand Tours because I was all performance minded beforehand with wanting a WRX and all the hardcore stuff, and I think I enjoy having the comfort now too. And let me see. Stefan also says don't let the 150 kilowatt peak DC charge rates for the Toyobaru's EV fool you. They stay up at their peaks a long time. My old Model 3 Performance Highland only stuck around its 250 peak for a hot minute or two. Yeah, that's the way a lot of charge curves go. So if the Toyota and Subaru are actually holding close to that, or even at 100, is a pretty good achievement. To hold it even that for the whole time is really good. Because even the Lyric, I mean, that thing will pull down. I think it tops out at was it 190 kilowatts, but it doesn't stay there very long either. And I mean, large majority of the charging, 120 to 100, kilowatts or so. So charge curve is more important than peak, honestly. And whenever you're talking about real long distance driving and stuff. And Goth Rocker says, the Charger has a roomy back seat. Absolutely. And Raphael says, I could do a GR86. In 6 years, I've had someone in the back of my Camry exactly once. Well, yeah, sounds like you'd be the prime target then for a nice little coupe for sure. And Luke says, I drive multiple people a couple of times per year, but 80% of the time it's just me and 10% of the time one passenger. Okay. Yeah, so then sounds like you would you'd probably be mostly okay, as long as you have the flexibility for those few times a year where you need to drive a bunch of people. But I think that's you might be able to pull it off there, or again, just have something with a back seat, in those crunches if you need to. But hopefully you could maybe make that work. And Stefan says the Toyobaru's actually a DC charging in similar times to the Model 3 and Y. Really? I didn't know they were that good. That's Subaru and Toyota need to bring more press to that, because I honestly I didn't even know that, because they don't publish charge curves typically or ever. I actually don't think any manufacturer has said, here is our full charge curve. Maybe some have, like later or something. But as far as like, here's press materials, here's our charge curve, no one says that. But like maybe that's too complicated. They think that doesn't get appreciated or something. But for those of us who do, enjoy explaining that kind of stuff to people and understand the importance of that, that's important info. So yeah, they should have totally played that up more. That's impressive. And Garth Rocker says, saw that damn F type again today. Keeps making me think about getting one. But then I saw a nice Corvette from 2018 and I always liked them. Then saw a 2021 Mustang Mach 1, always liked them. Yeah, all good choices in their own way. Different types of fun there. That's awesome. Good spots too. And Chad says, I sent you a pic of a funny street sign on Instagram, but I see it a ton. There are a lot of private communities around here, usually rich Northerners or California people. It's kind of crazy. Yeah, I mean, that's the tale as old as time is, especially up here in Pittsburgh, all the, snowbirds that go down to Florida or just stay down there because, yeah, especially as they age, a lot of older people love their Florida weather. So, yeah, I get it. And Garth Rocker says, Matt, this was funny. Went to Steamtown today in Scranton, seeing the big boy steam locomotives from the 1940s. An old man saw my Lincoln Continental and asked if it was custom made. He could not believe it. Wow, that's fun. That he appreciates. He says he never knew that Ford and Lincoln made a Continental or a car like this. I keep it mint. Told him 2017. Could not believe the full open glass roof. He said he never knew about them. He had a Mercury Marauder. Wow. That is crazy that there's people that have never heard of certain things. I was actually just at a wedding last night, and I was talking to someone very nice. They were a car person, self-proclaimed, car person. They had a Roush Mustang, I think a 2006 Roush Mustang. They said they really loved, and they said they just picked up their first EV last year. They got an Optic. I'm like, oh, that's great. I have a Lyric, and we're talking about, how we like the Cadillac EVs. I'm like, yeah. I'm like, honestly, I like the Optic so much, we probably would have went for it if it had CarPlay. He's like, what's CarPlay? Now, admittedly, he was older. I'd say he was probably in his, late 50s, early 60s. But like stone face was like, what is CarPlay? And me and the other person as they're talking were like explaining, like, it's like your phone screen on the car screen. And like I kid you not, this person had never, ever, and also a car person, never had once heard of what CarPlay was. And that really, those types of encounters are so illuminating to me. Just like, the person who you think would be a pretty prime target for a Continental purchase, someone who has, an upmarket, Mercury Marauder, probably likes this stuff, is in the Ford communities, and to have no idea, I've never seen the marketing from the Continental, and just have no idea that was a thing like that. It's mind blowing, but like, I had that my own kind of mind blown experience with that here last night. And it's like, it does help me to keep myself out of my own head, my own shoes. And like when I do these reviews, I do try and approach these things from a relatively entry level standpoint. Cause I do have, 80% of my views coming from non-subscribers. And so remembering that some of these non-subscribers have never heard the word CarPlay uttered once, or never heard that there was a new Continental, or that these kinds of things existed. It's wild. But there's a lot of stuff like that I come across, not all the time, but like weird things like that. And it's like, man, like, and what was the other one? Well, actually, I got it a lot with the Mach E. And I mean, admittedly, that was kind of a newer thing, back in, because they came out in the end of 2019. They were on the road in 2020, but with COVID and stuff, people maybe not being out as much, I don't know, but like, for the 3 years we had that thing, multiple times I talk to people and they say, what? It's a Mustang, but it's like, they had never heard of it. And I mean, again, newer, so more forgivable, but same kind of thing of, and even like Mustang people or like muscle car people, they're like, wait, what? Like, I love my Mustang, but now it's an SUV. And, it's like, okay, you're in the Mustang community and you haven't heard all the hubbub and all the gnashing of teeth over this thing. But there's people who are like genuinely like, wow, like first time, and watching them take that in for the first time. I'm like, okay, like in real time, watching them process the Mustang is now an electric SUV. and how they feel about that. Surprisingly, it wasn't quite as much of a meltdown as you would expect. A lot of people are like, "Oh, wow, that's kind of cool," and like it was mostly positive, but like, yeah, there's a lot of that. And again, we kind of all take this for granted because we all are on the same page, that are on automotive YouTube and stuff. And we're all well researched. We know everything about cars, but like there's a lot of people, even car people out there that genuinely do enjoy cars, but they don't stay up on a lot of stuff, and it's quite pretty crazy. So, but that is wild. I'm gonna keep that one in my back pocket too. Yeah, the Continental is so obscure that a Mercury Marauder owner did not know nearly 10 years later that the Continental existed. That's crazy. Man, well, thanks for sharing, Goth Rocker. And I don't know if you were in here earlier, but Hagerty just announced their road of the year supposedly, and it's PA, I think, State Route 144, which apparently is in the middle of the state going north to south. And I know you're kind of up there, near Scranton, so you might have come across it. I've never come across it, but I'd love to hear if you've driven that before. Is it worth the hype that Hagerty is now endowing it with? But I figured you might be the only one here who knows anything about that road, possibly. So curious to hear your thoughts. But anyway, let me see here. Other questions. Let me see. Stefan says, no more thick laptops. I'm in team thin it all down and make it respectably powerful for content creation. Yeah, which I think is a pretty easy task to accomplish these days, So yeah, I kind of question who needs more power, than what we already have with the current, MacBook lineups and stuff. And let me see here. Also, Chad, thank you for another super chat. He says Texas is #1 state in renewable energy. Interesting. I had heard that it was, one of the better ones, but I didn't realize it was #1 now. That's awesome. And I'm very glad for that. I wonder what the culture is like around that, are EVs frowned upon in Texas? Because I genuinely don't. I know, it depends on where you're at because there's so many different cultures depending on where you're at in Texas. Like my sister-in-law lives in Austin. We've been to Austin, and I've been to Austin several times over my car reviewing days here. But like Austin, obviously very friendly to EVs. But I kind of wonder once you get out into the sticks and into the more remote areas, how much that is embraced. But hopefully it is. Yeah, because I think Texas is a prime kind of state to really reap the benefits of the renewable energy stuff, especially. And let me see. Also, Jorge, thank you so much for super chat. He says, "What's CarPlay? Did he look like Tom Hanks and miss his best friend Wilson?" Yeah, you would think. No, it was yeah. And I mean, CarPlay's been around since 2016 was the first integrations, I believe. So we are actually 10 years into that. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, they don't really advertise it, I guess, that much on like regular TV commercials and stuff. And like, a lot of people just, they're not paying attention to that stuff anyway. But like, yeah, it was it was wild. And Lance says, Wilson, come back. And Ryan, thank you so much for a super chat too. He says, hey Matt, what are your thoughts on a 2025 Lexus ES350? I don't like the new one. The old one is still really great. Still the same kind of thing, Camry based, very comfy. I think I only reviewed one ES of that generation, and it was the ES350 F Sport. And that car, just the suspension was not set up well on it. It was overly stiff, and it's like they were trying to make it some kind of sporty thing. But the weird thing is it had like no grip, and that thing, the tires like weren't great. And I wasn't able to actually go that quickly in it because it just couldn't put power down. It was just kind of a mess. So I'm not a fan of at least whatever year I reviewed. It was, I think, maybe it was a 2021, maybe it was even like earlier. But not a fan of the F Sport if they kept the suspension tuning the way I remember it. Regular version is probably great. The hybrid is probably a great choice, these days too, if you don't need the extra power. But yeah, I think that's a great choice. If you like the older stuff though, but you want a new Lexus, I think the IS, it's a little smaller, so it may not work for you, but the IS is kind of giving you that new-ish interior, not the crazy new one you get in the new ES, but you get the touchscreen, you get, all the other, newer stuff there, but, and a fresh face, but nothing crazy. And you still have that same V6, you still have the same good old, reliable chassis and setup that everyone knows and loves there. So could be an alternative again if the space works. But ES is great for the old ones. They were a very good seller for a good reason. And typically, I would assume the non-F Sport version is very comfy. I just can't speak from experience there, unfortunately. But hopefully, that helps you a little bit. Let me know if you have any follow-up questions. But thank you so much for the super chat, Ryan. And let me see here. Vishal says, speaking of theft, Hondas are a common target for getting the radar sensors stolen off the front of them in the Northeast, mainly like New York City, Philly, etc. Interesting. That is wild. And there was another weird theft thing like that with headlights. That's another really big thing. Like I just saw there was a few months back a Taycan that someone like took a Sawzall on the street and cut the headlights out of a Taycan. And I guess those go for big money. I mean, they're probably fancy units, so I don't, I'm not surprised. But like, someone came back and they didn't bother stealing the whole car; they just chopped out the headlights. And with these things being full blown like movie projectors in the headlights and the lights, like the Audis are these OLED units, super expensive, I'm sure. And so that could be a concern in the future of like, why even bother steal the whole car if these lights are, a quick $5,000 or something or more, on the gray market, black market stuff, whatever. Like you might see a lot more of that too. I don't know. But yeah, it's crazy. Radar sensors are another prime target though. You're right. Cause like that's always right. It has to be right there in the front of the bumper, very close to the edge there. So you can, get the good read of all the info. So that is, yeah. And those are expensive units. So I didn't think about that, but that's probably going to be a huge problem here for the future. And Juan, thank you so much for a generous super chat. I really appreciate it. He said, manufacturers need caution using legendary nameplates. They won't get a second chance. If the car doesn't get delivery or doesn't get delivered, if the car doesn't deliver, they've destroyed the name. The Mach-E got it right. Most people call it the Mustang Mach-E. Yeah, I think, and this is why I don't love the Eclipse name coming, back onto the new Nissan Leaf rebadge. It'll be very interesting to see what they do with Camaro, because there's talks that even if it is V8 and manual, rear-wheel drive for a new Camaro, it might be a four-door. And I think most people would probably be okay. Like that's something they can live with. But, I'm old enough to remember all the people that lost their minds over Charger being a four-door back in, 07 or whatever, when they revealed that. So you might have some of that. So I agree. And this is why I understand the equity of a familiar name. And when you're selling to, again, people who haven't heard of CarPlay and trying to get through to that kind of a demographic, like you need to have a recognizable name. I get it, but like, it's just, they need to have the bravery to do new names. There's other names you can use for things that are cool sounding. They can be your next legacy products, but a lot of these companies just don't have the bravery for it. But I totally agree, Juan. And also, I'm not paying $42,000 for a Prelude. Thank you so much for gifting 5 memberships as well. I really appreciate that generosity. And happy to see that Immutable Do. I recognize that one. He's able to get a membership there. And let me see. It looks like otherwise mostly some new names there. So that's awesome. But thank you so much for your generosity. Let me see here. Let me see. Guess we're not too far behind. Doing okay here. So Chad says, do you think we'll look back at these AI computing centers like we look back at early computers from the 80s and 90s with new advances, including possible quantum computers? Yeah, I think there's going to be some of that. I think that it's kind of tricky though, because there's kind of this difficult leap where where do you go from the screens? Once you've filled the whole car with screens, the next frontier is just full windscreen head-up displays is kind of going to be the next, I think, leap. But that is going to be competing also with like just VR headsets and things like that. potentially, but like there's been some resistance to that actually. Like, do people actually want to do that or not? So like, I think that yeah, you're kind of seeing the migration slowly, like the new BMW new class stuff, where you have the whole strip of head-up display at the base of the windshield. Even Lincoln doing this, and having that kind of similar thing with the Nautilus. I think you're going to see that creep up to a point, where it's just like, okay, well, we can't have screen anymore. We need to have a projected kind of thing. But I think that's kind of where I see the future going for that display tech. So yeah, it'll definitely feel old because you're like, oh wow, remember those old clunkers where you had to look down at a screen, and you had to tap around on stuff instead of just, I do really think the future will be just projected, windshield gesture controls. But I think there is still the button thing is just still going to take a long time to wean people off of, and especially if we regress for a while we're having these chip shortages and we go back to basics. um, I think you're going to see that kind of stall out a little bit, but I think that is ultimately where we'll go in the next 10 or 20 years. Because there's also the conversation, because I think this is kind of a growing sentiment of, we're seeing all, like even PA just in June started enforcing a hands-off cell phone policy while driving, which I'm all for. I think it's great. But it's, I think, going to be this growing concern over how distracting touchscreens are, giant ones especially, because there's even a comic that I follow, and they're like, put your phone down, use the giant TV in front of you. Like that's any better, really? And it really probably isn't that much better. I mean, the good thing with CarPlay is that it does limit what you can do. So you can't scroll Instagram, you can't, be typing an actual message or looking through emails, all these other things that are more focused demanding. But I think that there's going to eventually be, once we're again in a land where regulation is a thing, or maybe this is just something the Europeans will lead on. But I think you're going to see regulation eventually around, like, you can't have a huge screen, you can't have everything so in your face, because it's and it's just going to be a problem until we get to fully autonomous cars. Once you're at that point, then they're going to go nuts and you won't even have a windshield anymore. It'll just be a theater display, and who cares what's going on around you outside, because the car is going to be nearly flawless at that point and people will trust it. But that's, again, way off in the future. So it's going to be this weird awkward middle ground, and it might just go from everything or nothing to everything all at once. But yeah, I think it's going to be more so like the driven days versus the driverless days is what you'll kind of look back on and see the difference of, more so, because I think honestly, like, that stuff is more primed to become more mainstream here than the display tech necessarily. But we'll see how that goes out. But I think you could actually see kind of a backpedaling in a way of some of the tech in cars a little bit, depending on how things play out with the RAM stuff. And Stefan says, that's what I did with a Polestar 3 late last year. Now it's an orphan. Yeah, with the crazy Polestar news here this week. Yeah. And hopefully you enjoy the Polestar, though, here. And hopefully the service and all that is still flawless for you. And Goth Rocker says, the old GoPros were better made. The new ones suck. Yes, they were really bad for, I think, the 8 through 10 or so. I think were really bad. I was hearing it from all my buddies, also do videos and stuff. I think from 11 or 12ish year, they've gotten a lot better. And the 13, I've heard, is totally fine so far, because I think they finally got the memo, like, people are going to quit buying our stuff if it doesn't work most of the time, which is, I think what a lot of people had the experience of with some of those other ones. But I think they're back on track. I could be wrong. There's a lot of other great options, though, again, with Insta360 now, and with, what's the other one? The DJI ones that are, pretty good too. So yeah. But yeah, I'm glad these old ones are still, this old one's still running like a tank. And let me see. Also, Lancewell, thank you so much for a kind super chat here. He says, how long before we get cars like they had in the JCVD movie Time Cop? No windows and fully automated. If I had to guess, because I think it's not so much even a technology component. Because I think from a tech standpoint, we could probably be there in about 10 to 15 years if people had the faith in them. But I think it's going to take a lot longer than that to get mainstream faith in those cars. Um, and also, not only faith in the occupants of those cars, but the faith of the other people around them to not freak out and be terrified of the windowless car driving around them. Um, so, I mean, you just think about how reluctant people are to this stuff. And I think that could change very quickly because a lot of people hate driving. And once it is actually proven these things are, I mean, they're already way safer. I mean, Waymo already has published all of their data and says it's like 40 times, I think, safer than a human driver typically. Even I think as horrible as full self-driving is, I think even they're claiming, I don't think they have quite as much transparency with their data. I think they're claiming it's like 10 times safer than a human driver. I don't know if I believe that one, but I do believe the Waymo data because as much as, every single misstep that one of their cars takes is blasted on social media, they do a lot of boring, normal drives in those driverless cars every day without issue. I mean, I saw it when I was in Phoenix, just when was that? Late last year with Nissan. Um, they were everywhere. Just driving along next to me, nobody, in the front. Um, and they do these regular drives up and down the roads of Phoenix every day, no problems. And then maybe when you hear something once a week, once a month, whatever it is, and you think about the miles they've racked up and all the uneventful miles, and then you think about how many idiots rear-ended someone in the past week, how many people have, senselessly died with their own stupid actions in the past week. I mean, like literally just last night on the Pennsylvania Turnpike here, two people didn't go around a corner at 2:30 in the morning. Maybe they just fell asleep or whatever, but neither of them were wearing seatbelts, died instantly. Like there's just so much just complete gore that happens for no good reason. And obviously seatbelts is a whole nother level of, I mean, like rest in peace, but like, that's a very basic thing. If you can't buckle up, like, I don't have a whole lot of sympathy there, but like, I think that these things, once it's proven like, hey, you don't have to have a sketchy Uber driver anymore. You don't have to have, once these things get really, really good, I think people will accept it a lot faster, but I still think it's going to be, there's going to be so many people that still just, are not comfortable with change. And it's going to be a long time before it's truly mainstream, I think. But I mean, I still genuinely wonder, whenever my daughter is old enough to drive, which is going to be around 2036 or so, I'm still going to teach her just because it's fun. And even if it's like teaching someone how to ride a horse on a horse track, like I'm still going to do it regardless. But like, I really wonder like how much my daughter's ever going to actually have to drive. Now she can drive recreationally. She can, do it for fun, but like, I don't really know. I think it could actually be that soon before, we'll have a lot of that. Not completely, coverage because there's other weird, instances like myself. Everywhere my daughter goes, she needs to be in a car seat. I'm not going to put her in an Uber. We've never Ubered with her. We've never done any of this stuff because like, I mean, she's getting close to being, I mean, we could put her in a booster technically, which if we had to, we could, but like, transferring car seats and all that kind of stuff like doesn't work in a ride share only model. So there are going to be especially young parents that just need to own a car. And I think that being fully driverless is a little further out than the rideshare stuff is. But I think you will see, car ownership drastically decline here in the next decade, especially, obviously starting first in those cities, but then gradually working its way out into the suburbs as these service areas increase. And it's gonna radically change the car world for sure. And I appreciate the flow state there from Fazlin. Thanks so much for that. And let me see. So try and wrap up the questions here in the last 7 minutes and be concise. We'll see if I have luck with that or not. But Michelle says you should look into the DJI action cams. Seem to be the best alternative to the GoPro. Yeah, I'll have to look into them. I have a lot of people that enjoy them, that have had good luck with them. So I will have to to see about those. I think, are they still selling them though? Because I feel like I go on DJI's site and like half the stuff says it's like sold out because of tariffs. They like just don't import as much anymore. So I have to look into it. Maybe they're just selling it elsewhere and not on their website anymore. But yeah, I'd love to try out maybe one of those too in the future, because I'm certainly not married to GoPro as a brand, that's for sure. But Michelle also says, also glad my parents are good on cars. Got the TX last year and the Sportage Hybrid this year. Both definitely will be there for the long haul now. Yeah, and great cars to be with for the long haul too, I'd say. And Vaslin says, now what have I done? My girlfriend dream car is an M2 comp, and now she is into Charger Hellcats. Nice. Well, sounds like you guys are pretty well aligned then. Congrats on finding a girl that is into Chargers and into the same kind of stuff that you are. That's awesome. I think that's you should be very happy with that, because there's a lot of guys that would love to have their significant others be super into the same hobby they are. So yeah, that's awesome. And Chad says, if you're old and don't need a third row, get a sedan. Crowns are nice, and so are Outbacks. Yeah, Outback is a nice option for people that I think a lot of the older people do really enjoy those. Yeah, Crown, that's one of the things that's nice about those, the slightly higher ride height, which I think is really smart of them. Whenever Crown was brought in to be an Avalon replacement, I think they had the right idea. Like, hey, these are pretty old people that buy these cars. Maybe we should give them a little bit of a higher ride height. But sadly, it didn't seem like it has translated to good sales for that car. But I mean, it sounds like Crown Signia actually is, doing pretty nicely right now. I think some of the sales recently have been people who said they can't get their hands on a RAV4 and they go for that instead. But yeah, I think the Crown Signia version could maybe be a really nice alternative for some of these people too, because it's, again, 2 rows, cool and sleek, gives them a bunch of space in the back, kind of a nice alternative. And Chad says, hope you feel better. Get some honey in your system. The alcohol remedies help too. Yes, I had some of that last night, but yeah, I am trying my best here. It's weird. It's like it's one of these colds where it's usually not an issue for most of the day, but then like towards the evenings and in the mornings, I feel like crap. It's just like taking forever to work its way through, but it's not going full cold, but it's also not going away either. So, gonna keep on working through it, but I appreciate that. And FC says they love their 26 Camry. That's awesome. Glad you're enjoying yours. And Goth Rocker says Toyota Crowns are being used a lot by Uber. They use the Crown for the Uber higher tier service. I actually drove one when they first came out, and I think the Crown is neat, but new Camry is a better value. Yeah, I think most people feel the same exact way. And I'm not paying $42,000 for a Prelude. Says finally saw someone who paid $42,000 for a Prelude. Wow. Did you tell them that you would not pay $42,000 for a Prelude? But I'm curious what the owner looked like if you were able to see them. Because the only Prelude I've seen was an older gentleman to, be nice about it. And I know, I think Chad said they saw one, but there wasn't a driver that they saw. Chad and Jordan spotted maybe, but curious what the driver was, because I really think it's going to be mostly pretty old people, but I'm curious. And Luke says, I drive between 400 to 650 miles per day. I still enjoy driving, some days more than others, but it's a lot different between car and semi. Funny enough, I can go longer in the semi before needing a break. I mean, I'm assuming it's probably more comfortable, right? They have those like air ride kind of seats, right? And stuff, but that's interesting though. Yeah, I mean, I guess it's just also built for it, right? Most cars are not built for that kind of miles. Versus a semi, they know that's what you're going to be doing, so they engineer it. To be long, all day comfort, kind of set up. So that's cool though. That's great insight though. Thanks for sharing. And Lancelot says, speaking of Uber, I have to get Uber XL because of my weight. Well, it's nice that they offer those options, for being able to give everyone rides. And yeah, it's hopefully it's not much harder. I know, you're in Montana. Hopefully there's still a decent amount of Uber availability out there. Yeah, an XL, I can't remember what XL, is it just larger vehicles or do they actually have to be SUVs? I can't remember what the criteria is for XL, but I know it's more expensive. So it's unfortunate. I apologize. That there's that tax for you, Lancelot. That sucks. And Michelle says I'm a tech nerd too, so I enjoy the thick MacBook Pro. When they came out with this design in 2021, I was sold immediately, lusted after it ever since, and finally was able to buy one last year. Well, I'm glad you're able to get one. And yeah, I was so thankful they finally, got back to having the SD card slot and all the jacks and stuff. Because my prior MacBook Pro was, it was the dongle special, kind of thing where everything had to be connected through USB-C and just a giant pain. So definitely nice to have the SD and all that now. And let me see. So Vishal says, my dad has an interest in cars, but isn't as up to date like us. I remember when we were buying my Jetta, he didn't know they stopped making the Passat. Seemed bummed by it because he does like that car. Yeah, stuff like that is a little more acceptable, I'd say, because they don't really broadcast when cars end unless it's a really, big deal. And if you're not following cars, you're not going to hear about that, unless you live in the town where they build it or whatever. But so that kind of stuff, I get that a lot. People are like, oh wow, they quit making that, and it's like, yeah, so that makes more sense in my opinion. And Goth Rocker also says that the old man's Mercury Marauder was really nice. He said he would have bought a 17 through 20 Continental if he knew. He said his sharp car, his Mercury was black like my Continental. Both neat. Nice. That's awesome. Yeah, well, I mean, it's never too late. Hopefully they can go out and find a nice used one, kind of like yours, and maybe they can enjoy the Continentals here. Put another one on the road. That'd be great. And Luke says, I feel like in the car community, people follow what they want and stay in that corner. Like a group of Mustang guys might not know much about a Civic Type R. Civic guys don't follow Mustangs, etc. Yeah, that's probably true. I'm sure there's a lot of that goes on. Yeah. Yeah, and Immutable Dudes, just checking in to say hi. Thanks so much for stopping by. I really appreciate it. And happy you're able to get one of the memberships there from I'm paying $42,000 for a Prelude. So thank you so much. And let me see. FC says EVs are popular in Texas cities. That's great. That's great to hear. And Goth Rocker says I was on Route 144 twice. It's a perfect road for the BRZ and 86 and Miata. Perfect for those kinds of cars. I drove it in my 2006 Subaru GT, similar to your Spec B. Was in a friend's Honda Del Sol. Nice. Well, that would probably be a great car for it. So I'm guessing, based on your description, it's a little bit of a narrower road, maybe a little bit more like low speed corners and stuff. Which sounds like a perfect road. I feel like this is a road trip I need to make at some point. That's fun. I'm happy to hear about this. Because like Tail of Dragon and stuff like that are cool, but so far. But if I have something that's I don't know exactly how far away that road would be, but probably 3 hours or less. Maybe, I don't know. That'd be pretty cool. And let me see. So Lancewell says they still call the Mustang Mach-E a Mach-E mostly so people know what I'm talking about. Yeah, I always have called it a Mach-E too. We never called ours a Mustang. And let me see. So C Striker says, hi Matt, hope all is well. Who would you want to be your next James Bond? I don't know. I mean, I don't really have a top person, honestly. I actually, back in the early rumor days of this, I'm talking 2020 or whatever, the early idea that it was possibly Idris Elba actually really excited me. I thought he could be a really awesome Bond. But there's been a lot of discussions about that, and even him himself kind of weighing in on, the baggage of, him being Bond and everything. And just, he'd be a great Bond, but I understand it from his point. I respect his perspective on it, and so obviously, if he's not into it, then that's not going to happen. And as I know, a lot of people actually have been recently discussing the I don't remember his name, but the guy who played Bond in First Light, the new game, that he would actually make a good young Bond. So that I wouldn't be mad with. I mean, it seems like, based on the game's pretty cool. I haven't played it yet, but, it seems like it's well reviewed and he fits the role well. That could have kind of been an audition, possibly. We'll see, if maybe he ends up being it. I mean, the pretty confirmed thing, according to the British tabloids, at least, was it was, James Taylor Johnson or whatever, I think is his name, that he was basically confirmed to be it. But there's been a lot of upheaval and drama, it sounds like, since then, possibly. So I don't know if he still is it or if he ever was. I don't know. But I don't think there's really any one person. There's a bunch of people I think would be cool, but um, yeah, I think as long for me, I don't even care so much who it is as long as it's someone who's really, pouring themselves into the role and isn't super typecast already from other stuff. Then I would be, into whoever it is. For me, it's mostly just about like making sure the story is well done, making sure the other cast around them is well done. Like the rumors of like Bezos putting his, new wife in as a Bond girl and stuff. It's like, good grief. Like if it's gonna be that, like count me out. Like I don't even want to watch it. If it's because then if like not only just for that reason alone, but like if those choices get approved, then it's like, okay, well, this is gonna be a train wreck as far as the decision makers are clearly, you know, influenced or going to have to bend the knee to whatever Bezos' whims are with that. Then just it's I can happily just say No Time to Die was the end. And in a lot of ways, I think for a lot of people, that if I'm not going to give any spoilers away, but if you've seen No Time to Die, it very much wraps up Bond very well. And if that's where it ends, I mean, we've got 25 great movies and plenty of entertainment to last you, a weekend or whatever. I'm fine with that because I think for me, I think a lot of people like their Bond is the one they grew up with, and the one that was when they were in their most impressionable period of their lives. And for me, that was Daniel Craig. So Craig will always be like the ultimate Bond in my mind. And obviously, lots of debate on everyone else's thoughts on that. But like, so I've kind of married myself to that, and whatever happens after that, could be fine. But it's the same as, like the Batman stuff. I was super into the Dark Knight trilogy, and Christian Bale will always kind of be my Batman. Like the Ben Affleck stuff, I never actually sat down to watch those. That was kind of when life started getting busier and more chaotic for me. But, never watched the Ben Affleck ones, haven't seen the Robert Pattinson ones. It's just kind of like I just lost interest, even though it's one of my favorite franchises, just lost interest. And life, obviously, too. But like, so I'm envisioning Bond will probably go that way for me too. But if maybe they come out with an awesome cast and it looks super amazing, I'll go see it. We'll see what happens. But yeah, I don't know. I'm curious if you have a preference, Sea Striker. I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on that. And I'm not paying $42,000 for Prelude. Says they drove past me before I could see who the owner was of the Prelude. All right, well, we'll keep the mystery going here a little while longer, I suppose. And I see Lancelot's on the same page about Idris Elba. Yeah, I really wish if we lived in a world where that was not going to be a stupid, huge controversy, like I would be totally into. But he's also the other problem with Idris Elba is he's also just old. And I think again, you could totally write a series of movies to pitch as an older Bond. And I think actually it's kind of smart if the Bond fan base demographics are probably skewing older these days anyway. I think that could work. But typically, Bond's got to be this super athletic, super spry, young-ish kind of guy. Obviously, again, Craig towards the end, still very much was, but was showing his age there. But like, I think it's a little bit too late for Idris. Unfortunately, I think that someone younger does need to be in the role probably better, especially if they're trying to court a younger demographic and make sure that Bond doesn't die with the older generations here. Then you got to bring in someone younger. So I'd say like a Tom Holland type or something like that. But like, obviously he's just too typecast. I think that'd be kind of a hard leap for him. But, someone even around that kind of generation, I think would be, a great choice potentially as well. I mean, Tom Holland, actually, he's very diverse with his roles. He's been doing a lot of interesting stuff. So, I mean, I have faith he probably could pull it off, honestly. I wouldn't be mad if it was him. I just don't know how that all shakes out with everything else that he's been known for. But maybe as he kind of does grow up and does go from being this teen Spider-Man thing to being a full-blown jacked dude or something, maybe it could really be a nice transition into a new franchise for him. I don't know, but yeah, we'll see. And Lance was saying most XLs here are Explorers and the like. Sometimes you'll see a full size like a Tahoe. Nice. And it also says Civic Type R or Integra Type Type S. I would go Integra because it has more character with the crackles and the pops. I like the lower profile of no wing on the back, and I like the better interior of interior and the better stereo of the Integra over the Type R. So both are great cars, but if you got the extra, what is it, $5,000 difference or whatever, $6,000, I'd rather have the Integra. And Michelle says, did you hear about Volkswagen cutting 15% of its workforce and closing 4 plants in Germany? I've been hearing this past week about all the, rumblings of them potentially cutting like 100,000 jobs total and stuff. I haven't heard any confirmed stuff. I didn't think they were allowed to close any plants before 2030 was my understanding based on the UAE, or not the UAE, but the union. I can't remember what the European Union workers, auto workers union is called, but I thought that the agreement they made last year required no actual closings, at least for some of the brands, maybe. I don't know. But anyway, I haven't heard the newest, if there's been something here over the weekend, but I'll have to look into that. I appreciate the heads up. And Ryan says, she does have a scary face. She could be a villain. That's true. She could be a villain. I think it's trying to be like obviously appealing. If he was self-aware enough to make her the villain, then okay, I could maybe get on board with that. That's a good point. That could be it. Okay, you changed my mind. If she's the villain, I'm totally in. There's no way he'll make her the villain, though. There's no way. Oh man, I'm gonna remember that one, Ryan. Thanks. And Colin Rocker says Daniel Craig did Bond so well; he was perfect. I agree. And Lance says Jeremy Irons did a great job as Alfred. Yeah, there's I've heard good things about the new Batman movies. Just have not. I need to sit down and just watch them someday. I think the problem too was like the Ben Affleck ones were like 3 hours long, and it was just like really tough. I mean, not like Christopher Nolan movies are short, but like I don't know. I wasn't. I don't know. Just the way they rolled it out, I wasn't into it. But I need to sit down and do it. Daniel Radcliffe, Lancelot's asking for Bond. I feel like that one, unless he has a dramatically different look, if he puts on a ton of muscle and stuff, maybe. I don't know. I honestly haven't seen anything that he's done in the past, 5 or 10 years. I think he's done a couple of shows and stuff too. I don't know. Maybe he's transformed himself enough that he would be able to fit it, but I don't know. Yeah, and let me see. Michelle says it's planned, so it doesn't seem like true confirmed. Regardless, that's a sizable cut. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there's going to be a lot of hard stuff with some of these car companies, and you're going to see even more. But again, as we get to, less car ownership, and we get to, these times where it's going to be unsustainable, these volumes that they're expecting, first because of affordability, and then because of, the driverless stuff taking over. But I think affordability is really going to start biting back eventually, because again, people just can't keep spending 30% more every few years. This train is not going to keep rolling. So it's going to stop. And it's kind of crazy if people think that we can just keep on spending with record repossessions with no one able to afford, anything. It's just, I don't know. We'll see. But I feel bad though for, especially the European companies, because they didn't really, have any say in lobbying like some of the American brands did, and the contributions that many of them made for the elections and stuff. Like the European brands, like they didn't ask for these tariffs, which made things even harder than they already were. They were really up against it already, and then you add tariffs and all these other global upheavals, and it's hard. I think we're going to see a lot of consolidation and a lot of a lot of rough times for some of these brands. And then you have brands like Polestar that just actually get kicked out and banned as well, because they can't pass the tests, and and also struggle as a brand here too. So I think you'll see some more of that, and maybe Slate will be a casualty. We'll see what happens. But at least you have affordability on the side of Slate there a little bit. So we'll see. But anyway, I'm impressed. My voice made it the full 2 hours and then some. We're at 2 hours and 15 here almost. So thank you all so much for a great chat here tonight. Thank you especially to all of you who did the super chats and the gifting of memberships. I really appreciate the generosity here in these. And I hope you guys enjoyed the chat as much as I did. And stay tuned for another one here on Wednesday, assuming my voice doesn't get any worse. But in the meantime, have a great week here, everyone. Stay cool if you're in some of these heat zone areas. I know we're going to be getting up into the mid 90s here this week. So if you're in one of those areas, stay cool, stay hydrated, take care of yourself, and have some fun too. I hope you all have a safe, happy, healthy week, and I'll see you guys on Wednesday or next Sunday as well. But thanks for watching this one, and take care.